All right, let's talk about a book that's way more than just a book. It's a full-blown cultural phenomenon. We're diving into Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This thing has sold millions and created a whole army of followers. But here's the big question. Is it a brilliant roadmap to financial freedom, or is it actually a really dangerous piece of fiction? Let's get into it.
First, just to give you a sense of the scale we're dealing with here, 32 million. That's how many copies have been sold around the world. I mean, that's a staggering number. That puts it up there with some of the biggest novels of all time. So yeah, this isn't just some book, it's a global movement.
And get this, it wasn't just some flash in the pan. Rich Dad, Poor Dad stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for over 6 years. That is incredible. That kind of staying power tells you it really struck a chord with people. It tapped into something deep about how we all think and worry about money.
So what's the big secret? Why did this book grab hold of so many people? Well, it's not because of complicated charts or dense financial jargon. It's actually all about a simple, really powerful story. The story of two dads. On one hand, you have Kiyosaki's actual father, the poor dad, a super educated guy who, honestly, struggled with money his whole life. And then, on the other hand, you've got his best friend's dad, the rich dad, a street-smart guy who dropped out of school but built an empire. You know, the real genius of the book is just how simple it is. It takes all these big, complex financial ideas and boils them down to just a few lessons that you can actually remember. And these lessons, they challenge pretty much everything we're taught about money. The whole point is to completely rewire your brain. Okay, this right here, this is the absolute heart of the whole rich dad philosophy. The poor dad's mindset is all about limits. It's that phrase, I can't afford it. It just shuts down the conversation. But the rich dad, he flips it completely and asks a question. How can I afford it? That one little shift, from a statement to a question, from passive to active, that's the book's most powerful idea. It opens up a world of possibilities.
So to really get inside Rich Dad's head, you've got to learn to speak his language. And it all starts right here, with a definition that is so simple. Forget what your accountant told you. For Kiyosaki, an asset is just anything that puts money in your pocket. End of story.
And you guessed it, the flip side is just as simple. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. That's it. No exceptions. And you know, this incredible simplicity is what makes the book so easy to get, but it's also, as we're about to see, what makes it so incredibly controversial.
And this is where things get really explosive. This is the book's most famous, most provocative idea. If you follow Rich Dad's logic, then your family home, you know, the cornerstone of the American dream, it's not an asset at all. Think about it. With the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the repairs, it's constantly taking money out of your pocket. So it's a liability. And that one single idea has made millions of people question everything they thought they knew about building wealth.
So when you boil it all down, here's the big takeaway from Kiyosaki. The real difference between the rich and everybody else isn't just how much money they make. It's what they do with the money they have. The rich use their money to buy assets that just generate more money. Meanwhile, the middle class gets stuck buying liabilities that they've been tricked into thinking are assets.
Now that message is simple, it's seductive, and it has made Robert Kiyosaki an absolute fortune. But there's a whole other side to the story, a much darker one. And it turns out the man behind the Rich Dad brand has a history that's just as controversial as his advice.
And yeah, this is where the picture gets, well, a lot murkier. The advice sounds pretty compelling, doesn't it? But what about the guy who's actually giving it? What does his own financial life really look like?
So let's talk about this number, $23.7 million. This isn't profit, this isn't revenue from some brilliant investment. Nope, this is a court judgment.
So what happened? Well, back in 2012, the Rich Dad empire got hit with a massive lawsuit. A company called The Learning Annex, one of his business partners, sued him. They said Kiyosaki was hiding millions in profits to avoid paying them what they were owed. And a court agreed, slapping them with a judgment of nearly $24 million. And Kiyosaki's response? His company, Rich Global LLC, just filed for bankruptcy. And that lawsuit, believe it or not, is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the storm of controversy that has followed Kiyosaki for years. The debate over his advice and his business practices is fierce. You've got people who will defend him to the death and critics who are just as passionate. I mean, you hop on a forum like Reddit, and you don't have to look far to find comments like this one. This sums up how a lot of his critics feel. They don't see a financial genius, they see a con artist who's got a long and messy history of legal troubles. And the criticism isn't just about his business deals.
A lot of actual financial experts have taken aim at the book itself. Someone like financial writer John T. Reed doesn't mince words. He thinks the advice isn't just too simple, he thinks it's flat out dangerous.
So if you look at all the criticism, it really boils down to a few major points. One, the advice is just too vague, with no real, actionable steps. A lot of people seriously doubt if Rich Dad was even a real person. Then there's the charge that the book is just a big sales funnel to get you to buy his super expensive seminars, and that it pushes people towards risky real estate deals and even multi-level marketing schemes.
So, where does that leave us? It's a total paradox, right? You have this book that has genuinely changed the lives of millions of people for the better, but it's written by a man with, let's be honest, a really messy and controversial past. So what are we supposed to make of the whole rich dad, poor dad phenomenon? But you just can't ignore the other side of the coin. For every critic, there's someone like this Reddit user who says, look, for all its flaws, this book was a wake-up call. For tons of people who knew literally nothing about money, it was the very first time anyone had ever encouraged them to think differently about their finances. And really, this table just lays it all out, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the whole debate. The exact same things its fans love, the simple ideas, the motivation, are what its critics hate, calling it vague and just a sales pitch. It gets praised for changing how we see assets, but then it gets slammed for promoting what some people call a pretty toxic, anti-job mindset.
So I guess the real question we're left with is this: is flawed advice actually better than no advice at all? For those millions of people who got inspired and started their journey to financial literacy because of this book, was it a necessary first step, even with all its problems? Or does all the controversy around the author and his business practices just do more harm than good in the long run? That's a question the financial world is still wrestling with. And really, it's one that every single person who picks up the book has to answer for themselves.